Master P has fans doing a double take after comments started circulating online suggesting that C murder could have been out years ago if an 8-year deal had really been taken. Now social media is in a frenzy, blogs are picking the story apart, and people are asking the same question over and over again. Was there actually a moment when everything could have gone differently? According to the conversation now making rounds, Master P appeared to reflect on the painful choices, the family tension, and the years that followed, and fans are shocked by how emotional this whole situation has become. Some people believe this is one of the saddest what-if stories in hip-hop history, while others think there is far more to the case than what is being said in these viral clips. Either way, emotions ran high the moment this started spreading, because this is no longer just about old headlines. This is about regret, loyalty, family pressure, and a decision that people online are saying may have changed everything. If these reports are true, then the fallout is even deeper than most people realized, and the family may still be carrying the weight of that one turning point all these years later. In the days after those comments started spreading online, the internet quickly turned the situation into one of the most talked about discussions in hip-hop circles. Blogs, reaction channels, and fan pages began replaying the clip again and again, each time highlighting the same shocking idea that people could not stop thinking about. If the reports circulating online were accurate, then there may have been a moment years ago when everything could have gone in a completely different direction. Suddenly, fans were debating a single question across social media platforms. What really happened during that time, and why would anyone refuse a deal that could have changed the rest of their life? Many fans watching the discussion unfold said the situation felt like one of those painful crossroads moments, the kind of decision where one path leads to freedom and the other leads into a long and uncertain battle. According to the claims now spreading across the internet, there may have been a point when an 8-year deal was placed on the table. By that time, several years had already passed, meaning that the remaining time could have been short enough that freedom might have come much sooner than anyone expected. The idea alone shocked many viewers, because it suggested that the entire story people had followed for years might have had a very different outcome. When Master P reportedly reflected on that moment during a recent conversation, fans said the tone of his words felt heavy, not angry, not bitter, but filled with the weight of someone who had watched time pass in a way that could never be reversed. People online began repeating the part of the conversation where he appeared to talk about listening to the people who truly care about you, instead of the voices that come and go around you during difficult moments. That sentence alone sparked a wave of reactions, because many listeners believed it hinted at something deeper than just a legal situation. It sounded like a family reflecting on choices that cannot be undone. As the clip continued to circulate, reaction videos started appearing everywhere. Some creators described the situation as heartbreaking, saying it felt like watching a family revisit the most painful chapter of their lives. Others tried to break down the timeline that fans believe may have existed. According to the discussions happening online, there was reportedly a window of time when the legal battle had temporarily opened the door to a deal. Some commentators explained that deals like this sometimes happen between trials or during complicated legal processes. They pointed out that accepting such a deal does not always mean admitting guilt in the way people assume. Sometimes it is simply about ending a long fight with the system. That is where the debate became even more intense. Some fans argued that refusing the deal may have come from a place of principle. If someone truly believed they were innocent, signing any agreement connected to the accusation might have felt impossible. Others said the legal system often forces people into impossible decisions, where standing by your innocence carries enormous risks. People watching the discussion could not agree on which side of that argument made more sense. In one popular reaction stream that quickly gained thousands of viewers, the host paused the clip and asked the audience a direct question. Imagine you are in that situation. Imagine believing you did nothing wrong, but being told you can walk away if you accept a deal. Do you fight for your name, or do you choose the chance to go home? The chat exploded instantly with divided opinions. Some viewers typed that they would never accept something they believed was unfair. Others responded that freedom is priceless.
Sometimes survival means making the hardest decision possible. While fans argued back and forth online, the emotional side of the story kept drawing attention. People began talking about the years the family had spent fighting through courtrooms, legal filings, and public debates. Many supporters remembered the rallies, interviews, and social media campaigns that had happened over the years. Through all of that, Master P had often spoken passionately about wanting his brother home. That long history of support made the new comments feel even more complicated to listeners who heard them. Several commentators said the remarks sounded like a mix of love and frustration, the kind that often exists inside families facing a crisis that lasts for decades. When someone you care about is locked in a battle that never seems to end, emotions can change many times along the way. Hope rises, hope falls, and sometimes the weight of the years forces people to reflect on moments that once seemed small but later feel enormous. Another part of the conversation that fans focused on involved the influence of people around someone during incarceration. In the clip now being shared widely, Master P appeared to mention the idea that people inside prison environments can have strong opinions about how someone should handle their case. According to many viewers discussing the situation, he seemed to suggest that advice coming from inside those environments can sometimes push someone towards continuing the fight rather than stepping away from it. That observation created another wave of debate online. Some fans said it was unfair to place blame on outside voices because the final decision always belongs to the person facing the case. Others believed that when someone is surrounded by constant pressure and opinions, it can become extremely difficult to know which voice to trust. The more people talked about it, the more the situation began to look like a complex mix of pride, loyalty, and hope. One podcast host who reacted to the story described the moment as something that happens more often than people realize. He said that in many high-profile cases, there is always a moment when a person must choose between the uncertainty of trial and the certainty of a negotiated outcome. The problem, he explained, is that no one can predict the future. What feels like the right decision in that moment might look completely different years later. As the story kept trending, fans also began discussing the broader history of the family behind the headlines. Long before this legal battle ever began, the Miller family had built one of the most influential empires in hip-hop. Coming from the neighborhoods of New Orleans, they turned ambition into a business that changed the music industry. Albums, tours, clothing lines, films, and business ventures created a legacy that many people still admire today. For supporters who remembered those early days, the contrast between past success and present struggles made the entire situation even more emotional. People watching the conversation unfold often said it felt like seeing two different chapters of the same story colliding, one chapter filled with triumph and creativity, and another filled with courtrooms and unanswered questions. Throughout the online discussions, one theme kept appearing again and again: the idea that one decision can change the direction of an entire life. Fans said that whether the reports about the deal were completely accurate or not, the situation forced everyone to think about how fragile turning points can be. A conversation, a signature, or a refusal in a single moment can echo for years. As the debate continued to spread, supporters and critics alike began looking deeper into the timeline surrounding the case, trying to understand what might have been happening behind the scenes during that period when the alleged offer was said to exist. The more people examined those years, the more complicated the story seemed to become, and the more questions started surfacing about what the atmosphere inside the family may have felt like during those critical days when the future still seemed uncertain. In the days after those comments started circulating online, the internet quickly turned the situation into one of the most talked about discussions in hip-hop circles. Blogs, reaction channels, and fan pages began replaying the clip again and again, each time highlighting the same shocking idea that people could not stop thinking about. If the reports spreading online were accurate, then there may have been a moment years ago when everything could have gone in a completely different direction. Suddenly, fans everywhere were asking the same question: was there really a point when freedom might have been within reach? People following the story said the tone of the conversation felt heavier than usual celebrity news. This was not just about gossip or music drama. It sounded like a family
reflecting on a turning point that changed the course of 2 decades. According to the clips now making rounds across social media, Master P appeared to talk about a moment when an 8-year deal was allegedly placed on the table. By that time, several years had already passed, meaning the remaining time could have been far shorter than people imagined. The idea alone stunned many viewers. Fans began reposting the clip with captions saying things like, "Imagine being able to go home years earlier, but choosing to keep fighting instead." Some people watching said they understood the decision completely. If someone truly believes they are innocent, signing any kind of agreement tied to the accusation can feel impossible. Others argued that sometimes survival means stepping away from a battle even when it feels unfair. Reaction videos began appearing everywhere. Hosts paused the clip repeatedly, analyzing every word and every expression. One popular creator told his viewers that this moment sounded like one of those crossroads decisions where there are no easy answers. On one side, there is the chance to walk away sooner, and on the other side, there is the hope of clearing your name completely. In the middle of all the debate, many fans focused on the emotional weight behind the comments. They said Master P did not sound angry in the clip. Instead, his voice seemed calm but reflective, as if he was looking back at a moment that had stayed in his mind for many years. Some listeners even described it as the kind of reflection that happens when someone has watched time move in a way that cannot be reversed. As people continued discussing the situation online, they began remembering the long history between the two brothers. Before any legal battles ever happened, the Miller family had already built a legendary reputation in hip-hop. Growing up in New Orleans, they turned ambition into an empire that changed the music industry. The success of No Limit Records in the late 1990s made them one of the most recognizable families in rap culture. Fans who remembered that era said the rise of the family had always been about loyalty and unity, brothers working together, building something powerful from almost nothing. Because of that history, seeing the family connected to such a complicated situation years later made the story feel even more emotional for longtime supporters. Another part of the conversation that caught attention involved the influence of people around someone during incarceration. According to the comments now being discussed widely online, Master P appeared to suggest that advice can sometimes come from unexpected places when someone is inside that environment. He seemed to be pointing at the difference between the voices of family members and the voices of people who come and go through the prison system. That idea sparked a new wave of discussion among viewers. Some people agreed immediately, saying prison environments are full of opinions that can push someone toward continuing a fight instead of accepting any kind of deal. Others said the final decision always belongs to the individual, and that no outside voice can truly determine what someone chooses to do. While fans debated these points, more reaction channels began examining the timeline that people believe existed. According to online discussions, the alleged offer may have appeared during a complicated period between trials. Legal experts who joined the conversation explained that such moments sometimes create opportunities for deals because the system itself is uncertain about how the next stage might unfold. That explanation made the story even more intriguing for viewers. If the reports were true, then the situation may have been far more complicated than most fans realized at the time. One legal commentator said that when someone faces a decision like that, they are not just thinking about numbers or years. They are thinking about reputation, family expectations, and the hope of eventually proving their innocence. Another podcast host reacted to the clip by asking a simple question to his audience. Imagine believing you did nothing wrong, but being told that signing a deal could end the fight much sooner. Do you keep fighting to prove your name, or do you take the chance to return to your family earlier? The comment section filled instantly with divided opinions. Some viewers wrote that they would never accept something they believed was unjust. Others responded that freedom is too valuable to gamble with, especially when the system itself can be unpredictable. The debate quickly became one of the most active conversations in hip-hop media that week. As the discussion grew larger, people began remembering how long the family had been dealing with the situation. Court hearings, appeals, interviews, rallies, and social media campaigns had stretched across years. Through all of that, Master P had often spoken publicly about wanting his
brother home. That long history of support made the new comments feel even more complex to many listeners. Some fans said the remarks sounded like a mixture of love and frustration, the kind of complicated emotion that can exist inside families dealing with a crisis that refuses to end. When someone you care about is caught in a battle that lasts for decades, feelings can shift many times along the way. Hope rises, hope fades, and sometimes people begin looking back at moments that once seemed small but later feel enormous. Another detail that kept appearing in online discussions involved the idea that a single decision can shape an entire future. Fans said that whether the reports about the 8-year deal were completely accurate or not, the conversation forced everyone to think about how fragile turning points can be. A choice made in a moment of pressure can echo through years that follow. As more bloggers and commentators continued examining the situation, they also began revisiting the early days of the Miller family story. Long before the headlines about courtrooms and legal battles, the brothers had been known for building something extraordinary together. They created music that defined an era and built a business that inspired countless independent artists. For many supporters, remembering that chapter made the current conversation even more emotional. It felt like watching two different stories collide, one story about ambition and success, and another about legal struggles and unanswered questions. Throughout all the reactions, one thing remained clear. The moment described in those circulating comments had captured people's attention in a powerful way. Fans were not just talking about the past anymore. They were asking what might have happened if the decision had been different, and what the family may have experienced behind the scenes during those years when the future still felt uncertain and every choice carried consequences that no one could fully predict. As the conversation kept spreading across social media, more voices from the hip-hop community began reacting to the situation. Some people said the story felt like one of the most painful what-if moments they had heard in a long time. Others believed that the internet might only be seeing a small piece of a much larger picture. Either way, the discussion quickly turned into a deeper look at how difficult decisions become when someone is standing in the middle of a legal battle. Several commentators started pointing out that when a case reaches a critical moment like that, the pressure on the person involved can become overwhelming. Family members want one thing, lawyers may suggest another strategy, and people on the outside often give advice based on emotion rather than reality. According to the reports being discussed online, that period of time may have been filled with intense conversations happening behind closed doors. Fans imagined what those conversations might have sounded like. Some believe the family may have been urging him to think about the future and the chance to come home earlier. Others suggested that the determination to continue fighting might have come from a deep belief that the truth would eventually prevail. In situations like that, the line between pride and principle can become almost impossible to separate. One reaction channel described the moment in a dramatic way. The host leaned toward the camera and said that sometimes the hardest decision in life is choosing between being right and being free. That statement immediately sparked thousands of comments from viewers who felt the same conflict inside their own minds while thinking about the situation. Many fans said they could understand why someone might refuse a deal if they believed it meant admitting something they insisted was not true. At the same time, others pointed out that the justice system often places people in situations where the safest option is not always the one that feels morally correct. This clash of ideas turned the story into something much bigger than just celebrity news. While the debate continued online, more people began revisiting the events that originally brought the case into public attention years ago. According to discussions circulating across blogs and podcasts, the situation started during a chaotic night at a nightclub where a fight reportedly broke out. Witnesses later described a scene filled with confusion, loud music, and dozens of people moving around at once. In the middle of that chaos, a tragic moment occurred that would eventually lead to one of the most controversial legal battles in hip-hop history. The details of that night have been argued about for years, with different people telling different versions of what they believe happened. Because of those conflicting stories, supporters have long claimed that the truth was never fully clear. Commentators analyzing the case often highlight the role that witness
testimony played during the trial. According to the conversations happening online, some witnesses later changed their statements, which created even more controversy around the outcome. Supporters said those changes raised serious questions about how reliable the original testimony might have been. Critics, however, argued that the courts had already reviewed those issues multiple times. They pointed out that appeals and legal reviews had taken place over many years. This back and forth between supporters and skeptics became another major part of the discussion as the story began trending again. At the same time, people also began talking about the power of reputation and public image in high-profile cases. Many observers noted that being a famous rapper can sometimes make a courtroom environment more complicated. Jurors may already have strong opinions before a trial even begins, especially if the artist has built a tough or controversial public persona. One legal commentator explained that public image can influence how people interpret evidence, even when they try to remain neutral. He said that when someone walks into a courtroom carrying a well-known stage name and a larger-than-life reputation, those factors can quietly shape how the case is viewed. Fans listening to that explanation started discussing how artists often create stage identities that are very different from their real personalities. The entertainment industry thrives on dramatic personas, bold lyrics, and intense storytelling. However, when those same personas appear in legal situations, they can sometimes be misunderstood by people who are not familiar with the culture of hip-hop. This idea added another layer of complexity to the story. Supporters argued that the public image of a rapper should never be treated as proof of real-life actions. Critics responded that the legal system must rely on evidence presented during the trial, rather than assumptions about an artist's career. While those arguments continued, attention slowly shifted back toward the emotional side of the family. Many fans remembered how Master P had spent years speaking publicly about wanting his brother to come home. Interviews, social media posts, and public rallies had all been part of the long effort to raise awareness about the case. People who followed the story closely said the relationship between the brothers had always been rooted in loyalty. They had built their careers together and shared both success and hardship. Because of that bond, hearing Master P reflect on the past made the situation feel even more personal. Some viewers interpreted his comments as the thoughts of someone looking back at a moment that still weighed heavily on his mind. They believed he was not trying to blame anyone, but simply expressing how painful it can be to watch time pass while hoping for a different outcome. Others saw the remarks as a reminder of how complicated family relationships can become when legal battles stretch across decades. Love and frustration can exist at the same time, especially when every new appeal brings both hope and disappointment. During one live discussion, a commentator described the situation in a way that resonated with many viewers. He said that long legal struggles do not just affect the person inside the courtroom. They affect parents, siblings, children, and friends who spent years waiting for news that might change everything. That statement led many fans to start talking about the emotional toll on the entire family. Visits to prison facilities, long legal meetings, and constant public attention can place enormous pressure on everyone involved. Some supporters said they admired how the family had continued standing together despite those challenges. Others wondered how many private conversations must have taken place behind the scenes during those years. When a family faces such a complicated situation, every decision becomes deeply personal. Advice, disagreements, and moments of doubt can all happen away from the public eye. As the online discussion kept growing, one theme continued appearing again and again. People were fascinated by the idea that one moment in time might have carried such enormous consequences. The possibility that a different choice could have changed the entire timeline made the story feel almost unbelievable to many listeners. Fans began imagining what life might have looked like if the situation had unfolded differently. Some speculated that the music industry might have seen new collaborations and projects. Others said the most important thing would have been the chance for the family to spend those years together instead of separated by prison walls. Yet, even while those possibilities were being discussed, many commentators reminded viewers that the past cannot be rewritten. Decisions made years ago remain fixed in time, and the only thing people can do now is continue debating what those moments meant. As
interviews and reactions appeared across the internet, the conversation kept returning to the same powerful question. What really happened during those crucial years when the alleged offer was said to exist? And what kind of discussions might have been happening behind closed doors, while the family tried to decide how to move forward in a situation where every option carried risks that no one could fully measure? As the debate continued spreading across blogs and video platforms, another layer of the story began capturing people's attention. Many fans started focusing on the emotional strain that long legal battles place on families. Commentators explained that when a case stretches across decades, the pressure does not remain limited to courtrooms. It slowly reaches into every part of family life. Supporters of the family often described the situation as a marathon that never seemed to end. Year after year, new hearings, appeals, and legal motions appeared, each one carrying the possibility of hope, but also the risk of disappointment. Fans following the updates said the emotional roller coaster must have been exhausting for everyone involved. During one live stream discussion that gained thousands of viewers, the host spoke about how public attention can make situations like this even harder. When a family faces a legal fight in private, they are at least able to process emotions quietly. But when the story becomes part of national conversation, every development is analyzed by strangers on the internet. That observation resonated with many viewers, who felt the story had become much bigger than the people at the center of it. Bloggers, commentators, and fans were now all trying to interpret the same pieces of information, often arriving at completely different conclusions. Another topic that began trending during these conversations involved the environment inside prisons themselves. Commentators pointed out that life behind bars is a completely different world, with its own rules, alliances, and pressures. When someone spends years in that environment, their perspective on decisions and strategies can be influenced by the people around them. According to the reports now being discussed online, Master P appeared to hint that advice from people inside prison environments can sometimes shape how someone approaches their legal fight. Some viewers believed this was a powerful reminder that incarcerated individuals are often surrounded by constant opinions about what they should do next. This idea created another intense wave of discussion. Some fans argued that it was unfair to assume outside influence played a role in such an important decision. They said the final choice always belongs to the person facing the consequences. Others believed that constant exposure to different voices can make it incredibly difficult to separate helpful advice from pressure. While these debates continued, attention also turned toward the resilience that supporters say C. Murder has shown over the years. Many fans pointed out that surviving decades in prison requires an extraordinary level of mental strength. Stories about hunger strikes and protests inside the facility began resurfacing as people tried to understand how he had managed to keep fighting despite repeated legal setbacks. Commentators often described those moments as acts of desperation designed to bring attention to conditions inside the prison system. Supporters said such actions showed a determination to be heard when other avenues seemed to be closing. Some legal analysts also revisited the courtroom history connected to the case. They explained that the conviction had originally come from a jury decision that did not require complete agreement from all jurors. Years later, that rule became the subject of major legal debates across the United States. When a later Supreme Court decision ruled that non-unanimous jury verdicts were unconstitutional, many supporters believed it might open a new path for cases that had been decided under the old rule. However, the legal system ultimately determined that the ruling would not apply retroactively to past convictions. That outcome left many supporters feeling frustrated, because they believed the change came too late to affect the situation they had been following for years. Critics responded that courts must apply legal decisions according to specific rules, even when the results are controversial. This complicated legal background added even more layers to the story. What had started as a conversation about an alleged plea deal was now expanding into a broader discussion about the justice system itself. Viewers began debating whether laws should apply retroactively when new rulings reveal flaws in older procedures.
While those legal questions continued circulating online, fans also started reflecting on the long history of the Miller family in the music world. Long before the courtroom drama ever began, the brothers had
been known for creating a powerful independent movement in hip-hop. No Limit Records became a symbol of self-made success during the late 1990s. The label released album after album, turning artists into stars and proving that independent companies could compete with major industry giants. Many fans remembered that era as a time when the Miller family seemed unstoppable. Because of that legacy, the legal battle felt especially tragic to supporters who had watched the rise of the family from the beginning. Some viewers described the situation as watching two completely different realities collide. One reality was filled with music, entrepreneurship, and cultural influence. The other was filled with courtrooms, appeals, and endless legal arguments. During another widely shared podcast discussion, one guest explained why stories like this capture public attention so strongly. He said people are naturally drawn to situations where success and tragedy exist side by side. When someone who once dominated the music charts becomes connected to a decades-long legal fight, the contrast feels dramatic and almost surreal. Fans listening to that conversation began sharing their own memories of the era when the brothers first appeared on television and radio. Some said they grew up listening to those albums and could hardly believe how different the story looked now. Throughout all these discussions, the idea of turning points kept appearing again and again. Commentators said life often contains moments where one decision leads to a completely different path than another. The problem is that people rarely realize how important those moments are until years later. Supporters of the family often described the alleged 8-year deal as one of those moments. Whether the reports about it were fully accurate or not, the idea alone symbolized a crossroads that fans could not stop thinking about. Some viewers imagined what might have happened if events had unfolded differently. They pictured a timeline where the legal fight ended earlier and the family moved forward with their lives. Others argued that speculation like that can be misleading because it ignores the complex emotions behind real decisions. As the conversation continued evolving, the public began realizing that the story was not simply about legal documents or courtroom arguments. It was about family relationships, loyalty, and the heavy weight of choices that must be made under extreme pressure. The more people talked about it, the clearer it became that the situation represented something larger than a single case. It reflected the complicated intersection between fame, justice, and family bonds. Each new reaction video or podcast episode added another perspective, making the discussion even more layered. And while fans across the internet continued debating the past and imagining what might have been, the focus slowly began shifting toward the present moment and the ongoing legal efforts that supporters say are still unfolding behind the scenes, as the family and their legal team continue searching for any possible path that might one day lead to a different outcome. As the discussion kept spreading across social media, the tone of the conversation slowly shifted from speculation about the past toward questions about the present. People who had followed the case for years began reminding new viewers that the story was still unfolding. Even though many legal doors had already been closed over the years, supporters continued saying that the fight was not completely finished. Online commentators began talking about how difficult it is for families to maintain hope during such long battles. Every appeal, every petition, and every legal motion can take months or even years before any decision appears. During that waiting period, families are left living in uncertainty while the public debate continues around them. Many supporters said that watching the Miller family endure this kind of pressure for so many years had become one of the most emotional parts of the entire story. People who had grown up listening to their music now found themselves discussing courtroom rulings instead of album releases. The contrast felt almost unreal to some longtime fans. At the same time, the internet continued revisiting the moment that sparked the current wave of attention. The comments attributed to Master P about the alleged 8-year deal kept circulating across blogs and video platforms. Every time the clip appeared again, viewers repeated the same reaction. Some said it sounded like the most painful what-if scenario they had ever heard connected to the music industry. Reaction channels kept pausing the clip and analyzing the tone of the remarks. Several hosts said the words sounded less like criticism and more like reflection. They believed the conversation felt similar to someone looking back at a crossroads from many years ago and realizing how different the
future might have been. Other commentators reminded their audiences that stories shared online are often only fragments of much larger experiences. They pointed out that legal negotiations, family discussions, and personal beliefs can all influence decisions in ways that outsiders may never fully understand.
Because of that, many viewers said it was important to treat the circulating reports as part of a broader conversation rather than absolute conclusions. While that debate continued, supporters also began highlighting the strength that they believe C. Murder has shown during his time behind bars. Surviving decades inside a prison environment requires a level of mental endurance that most people cannot imagine. Fans who followed the case closely often said they were surprised by how determined he appeared to remain despite the repeated setbacks. Stories about his efforts to raise awareness about prison conditions also resurfaced during the renewed attention. Hunger strikes and protests had previously been reported as attempts to draw attention to issues he believed were being ignored. Supporters said those actions demonstrated that the fight had never been limited to the courtroom alone. Critics responded that the legal system had already reviewed the case many times, and that courts must rely on the evidence presented during the trials and appeals. This disagreement between supporters and skeptics became another central part of the ongoing conversation. Legal analysts who joined podcasts and interviews tried to explain why cases like this can be extremely difficult to reopen once multiple appeals have been denied. They said that each new filing must meet strict legal standards before a court will even consider reviewing the arguments again. Because of those rules, even strong emotional support from the public cannot always change the outcome of a legal process. For many viewers following the story, this explanation made the situation feel even more complicated. On one side, there was a passionate group of supporters who believed the case deserved another chance to be examined. On the other side, there were legal realities that limited what courts could do after so many years. Throughout these discussions, the relationship between the brothers remained one of the most talked about elements of the story. Fans remembered how Master P had spent decades speaking about his hope of seeing his brother return home. Interviews, rallies, and public messages had all been part of that effort. Because of that long history, hearing him reflect on the alleged decision from years ago struck many listeners as deeply emotional. Some people interpreted his words as a reminder of how complicated family bonds can become when time, pressure, and public attention are constantly involved. One podcast guest described the situation in a way that resonated with many viewers. He said that when families face long crises, love and frustration can exist together. People may continue supporting each other while also carrying questions about moments that change the course of their lives. Fans listening to that discussion said it helped them understand why the recent comments might have sounded so reflective. The conversation did not seem focused on blame as much as it focused on the weight of time and the consequences that sometimes follow difficult choices. As more people joined the debate online, the story began to take on a broader meaning for many viewers. It was no longer just about one case or one alleged decision. It had become a symbol of how fragile turning points can be. A single moment of choice can send a life in a completely different direction. Supporters often described the alleged 8-year offer as one of those turning points. Whether every detail circulating online was completely accurate or not, the idea alone captured people's imagination. It represented the possibility that history might have unfolded differently. At the same time, other commentators reminded audiences that looking backward with hindsight can sometimes make decisions seem simpler than they actually were. People facing those choices in real time are dealing with pressure, emotion, and uncertainty that outsiders may never fully see. That perspective encouraged many viewers to approach the conversation with empathy rather than judgment. Instead of asking why someone made a particular decision, they began considering how complex the circumstances must have been at that moment. As the renewed attention around the case continued growing, one thing became clear across every discussion. The story still carries enormous emotional weight for fans, supporters, and the family itself. The mixture of music history, legal controversy, and personal loyalty has created a narrative that continues to capture public interest even after so many years. And while the internet keeps debating what might have happened in the past and what could happen in the future, the reality
Today remains unchanged. C. Murder is still behind prison walls. Supporters are still hoping for a different outcome. And the conversation sparked by those recent comments has once again reminded everyone how powerful a single moment of choice can be when it echoes across decades and leaves people wondering what life might have looked like if that moment had unfolded in another way. So after hearing all of this, the question that continues to echo across social media is simple but powerful. What really happened during that moment years ago when fans now believe an 8-year deal may have been on the table? According to the comments that started this entire conversation, Master P suggested that there may have been a chance for things to unfold very differently. But as many people online are pointing out, situations like this are rarely simple. Legal battles, family pressure, personal beliefs, and the unpredictable nature of the justice system can all collide in ways that no one fully understands from the outside. Supporters of the family continue to say they believe the story is not finished yet. They point to ongoing legal discussions and the determination that has kept the fight alive for more than 2 decades. Critics, on the other hand, say the courts have already reviewed the case many times and that the outcome may never change. This clash of opinions is exactly why the conversation has exploded again online. Fans are shocked, emotions have run high, and the family has once again found itself at the center of a public debate that mixes loyalty, regret, and unanswered questions. Some people believe the alleged decision years ago may have changed everything. Others believe the truth behind that moment is far more complicated than what any viral clip can explain. One thing is certain, though. The story has reminded everyone how powerful a single choice can be. Sometimes a moment that lasts only minutes can echo across decades, leaving people wondering what life might have looked like if things had gone another way. But now we want to hear from you. What do you think about the reports circulating online? Do you believe that refusing the alleged 8-year deal changed everything? Or do you think the situation was far more complicated than it appears on the surface? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this is one of those stories where every perspective adds another piece to the puzzle. And if you found this breakdown interesting, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next deep dive into the biggest story shaking the entertainment world. Turn on notifications as well, because the next update could arrive at any moment, and you will want to be the first to know when it does.